I Prevail Subs for supplements that will give you the results you've always wanted. www.i-prevailsubs.com. T2 Rise, a weight loss product that increases metabolic rate and accelerates fat oxidation for optimal weight loss. Rogue PW is a tremendous pre-workout that gives you the energy and mind-muscle connection to tackle those weights. Amped Up is a natural testosterone booster. It's a unique blend that will naturally enhance your body's muscle mass and reduce fat. Forge Pump creates massive blood flow and hydration for a great pump in the gym. Get these supplements and more at www.i-prevailsubs.com. And remember, use discount code SNS10 for the Serious and Silliness discount.
My suggestion.
Yeah, let's start with Big Ram. Let
me change where I'm sitting so I can get light better.
All right, cool. So the first thing is his supplement company drops him, Enhanced Muscle, and it's Tony Hughes that owns the company, and he said on RX Muscle, Tony Hughes said that he has never even spoken to Big Ramy. He's always had somebody.
Not since he brought him on?
Yeah, not since he brought him on.
Really?
Yeah. And
okay.
He dropped him because there was no social media presence, and
right.
There was he wasn't putting any work in trying to push the product or anything like that, and then he misses the guest posing at Pittsburgh Pro Jim Mannion show, and it's a good thing Derik Lunsford came in looking the way he did, because it kind of took a little bit of eyes off of that.
Took the steam out of Ramy gossip. Yeah.
Yep.
And then he didn't make a public apology until Dennis James was kind of put on the spot when asked where he was on his own podcast. It was Dennis James, Lee Priest, Milos, and Chris Cormier. And
quite the lineup.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. And they were basically, they asked him, like, where was he? And he didn't even know. And Dennis James actually went to the Pittsburgh Pro because he was supposed to be helping him. And he was there, and he didn't know. He said he spoke to him a couple of days before, said that he was going to be flying in, and so on and so forth, and just never showed up. And then a week later, Big Ramy puts out this apology that he's really sorry and so on and so forth, and blah, 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 and he'll do better and all this crap. And blah, blah. So that's basically the whole thing with Ramy. My opinion is I think Big Ramy thinks the world revolves around Big Ramy. That's there's a lot
of that going around. And that could be said, for past generations of athletes, bodybuilders, and so forth.
But none of them were this bad. None of them were this bad. I mean, people would complain about Phil Heath, but Phil Heath still showed up and did social media stuff and still showed up to guest posings and so on and so forth. Not to mention that Big Ramy literally needs to be taken by the hand between Chad Nichols and Dennis James and be spoon-fed in order for him to fucking follow through and win the Olympia. I mean, so it sounds like to me that he's just very genetically gifted. And I don't know. God knows what possibly could have happened, but nothing couldn't have gone. I mean, you could have texted Jim Mannion and apologized.
Well, look, he could have all the excuses in the world,
right?
Of anything short from being on a watch list that they wouldn't let him fly over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
However, you're Mr. Olympia. You're being paid, or you're under contract to make an appearance. You make a fucking phone call, or you let people know. Dude, it's just like you calling out a sick at work, dude. You just don't show up for work. You got to let people know. And sometimes the higher up these people are, the more they think they have carte blanche, where these rules don't necessarily apply to them. Now, I don't know. I don't really know all the underlying circumstances. He could have, a really good excuse for what just happened. But if you look at the behavior, if you look at the patterns of behavior with him, kind of goes with this motion where he feels like he doesn't have to answer to anybody, and people should cater to him, which is not going to get you very far, in not just the sport, but in life. But now, now you're losing your credibility as an athlete to your fans, to people who recognize you, and people who are going to hire you for future events or future showings. Like, I'm gonna promote a show and feature you as a guest poser and put your name all over the posters that you're coming. And now I got to explain or give back money to tickets that were sold because you didn't show up.
Right.
It's just bad business. I wouldn't do that, and I would hope nobody would do that to me. And I really hope he could straighten this out with whoever has seen a little bit of damage, from his actions.
What do you think, Derik?
Let me offer possibly a different perspective.
Right.
I guess you could call it playing devil's advocate. But so I've met Big Ramy at a couple of occasions a long time ago. Because I used to be a member at this gym in Connecticut, Montanari Powerhouse.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
So they had him that, I don't miss much about Connecticut, but that is one thing that I very, very deeply miss.
There's like a college every 27 feet in Connecticut.
Oh, dude. Connecticut is a big education state for sure.
Yeah.
But so I've met him a couple times, and probably and that was even when he didn't know as much English. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the nicest, sweetest people I have ever, just genuinely kind, not only in what he would say to you, but just his energy. His energy came off as kind. I felt very comfortable just being around him. What I have known about him just in the brief time I got to spoke with him, and then, as I've ascended through the ranks myself, being able to connect with different people who, were close to him or are close to him or whatever. He's nice to a fault, and to the point where he gets very easily pressured, and doesn't seem to deal with pressure very well. And a behavior that I noticed, just from afar, that kind of makes that a little bit more evident to me is he went through this period where he was just bouncing from coach to coach.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I don't, and I say he was bouncing. I don't think he was bouncing. I think people were just pulling him in different directions, and him not knowing as much English at the time, him not being familiar maybe with how everything works. He was very easily swayed. And it just led to him having 5 different coaches in 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I remember.
So he might, now I'm not saying this to excuse his behavior, because at the end of the day, it is very unprofessional, and it's something that should have never happened in the first place. But maybe he's the type that when he feels like he's being pulled in too many directions or drawn into a corner, that he kind of withdraws. So that's one perspective. The second perspective that kind of came to me from a post that I saw on Instagram, I think it was on Buys and Tries. Maybe he doesn't love bodybuilding anymore.
Well, he said he's going to retire
next year.
Right. He said he wants to retire by 37 because, he's not able to see his family as much. He's not spending as much time with his kids. That could have been another thing. Again, not excusing his behavior, but maybe he was just like, dude, I'm away from my family too much. I want to tangle my children. I'm not going over there. Bye.
Who doesn't? And agreed. However,
it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right.
It's still making a phone call. It's still making
exactly.
A phone,
no, I agree. But maybe he just doesn't love this.
But I agree. And I don't think he does.
Also, there's people, there's people that, they don't function, with people or society the way normal people do. I don't know if this is him or not, but maybe his way is withdrawing and not commit, and maybe he thinks that's okay. And maybe he's never been reprimanded for that before, and realize it's like somebody who has different types of learning behavior or dissociative learning behaviors. where they really don't know what's right or wrong. They just know what they feel in that moment. And he might not have been doing it because he was thinking it was wrong or there's going to be ramifications. And like I said, maybe he's never been called out on those ramifications before. But hopefully, this is a learning experience for him. And it doesn't cost him a place.
Mr. Olympia?
Yeah. Like that's, you got to think. There's guys that are just socially awkward or guys that just don't see things the way everybody else does. I don't think he did this intentionally or to be
there is a maliciousness behind it.
I don't think it was a malicious act. Dude, maybe that's just him and he's just awkward when it comes to these types of behaviors and maybe doesn't know any better.
I don't know. I mean, it's all well and good. It's possible, but he is in a very, very privileged position, and not too many guys are ever in the position that he's in.
Well, that goes to my point a little bit more. Maybe he feels as if he's never had to explain himself.
Yeah.
He's never had to be in a position to say, hey, dude, I'm not coming. He just doesn't show, and nobody gives a shit because he's fucking Big Ramy.
He's Big Ramy.
That's my point about the pressure thing. Before he won Mr. Olympia, the only pressure that he had was, when is Big Ramy finally gonna come in the shape? When are the quads going to be in all the way? That was his pressure. And that was it. That was all he had to deal with. So now for the first time in his life, the spotlight is on him, not just what he does on the stage, but everything he does off. Whereas before, all we cared about was stage Ramy and nothing else.
Yeah. Right.
So this could be a new experience for him that, like you said, he has to learn from and bounce back hard. He better start doing some serious publicity, start showing up literally everywhere, and bring the best Ramy we've ever seen. Otherwise, he's not going to win the Mr. Olympia. End of story. Mess around and lose to Clarita.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saying.
Right.
I have I don't know. We learned last time that I don't have a lot of compassion for guys who can't stand stress, because I was watching we were talking about what's his name crying on Fouad Abiad's show.
Blessing?
Blessing. And I'm not much of a very emotional person, and I can't stand seeing grown men cry. So when I hear things like it's a lot of pressure and so on and so forth, I'm like, yeah, dude, you're Mr. Olympia. If you can't handle it, fucking retire and let the next guy fucking handle it, because you are in a privileged position and you are obligated to promote the sport as the number one guy on the sport. I mean, I remember.
Look, there's an argument to that also. You just have a black heart and no soul. That's why you don't cry.
I wasn't gonna say it, but
right. I mean, dude, I cry all the time.
Jesus. What do you want, estrogen pills?
Pussy when it comes to emotional type of stuff. But
dude, if you put on Lion King right now, as soon as Mufasa dies,
I cry in every Disney movie.
Jesus
as soon
Christ.
as Mufasa dies, I'm gonna start crying. If I watch Up. That little montage, if you don't know if you guys have watched Up before, the montage in the beginning where he shows him married and happy, and then the wife dies and he's all alone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'd like waterworks.
When he shows up for the kid at the Boy Scout. Dude, who doesn't cry at that? Who doesn't get moved by those?
This guy doesn't. he's like, fuck this guy. Go get another wife.
But back to that, you say that he's in a privileged position. The reality is he's in a position that he's earned.
Yes, good point.
Whether we like his behavior on what he did here or not, he's earned his status. And granted, as a Mr. Olympia, you expect certain things. That doesn't necessarily always hold water, with certain different types of personalities. And you have a guy like a Phil Heath before who didn't necessarily get along with a lot of people, and he probably wasn't treated the way other Mr. Olympias like a Jay Cutler was, who was, Jay was everybody's hero, dude. He was, he was the people's hero. And you have a guy like Lee Haney, right?
Right.
Who didn't like Lee Haney? I mean, he was he was an all-American type of guy, dude. A guy of faith, a guy of this, a family man. But dude, got the minimal amount of publicity for being Mr. Olympia, and he held every virtue you possibly could hold as a human being, and as an Olympian athlete, right?
Absolutely.
So when it comes to a guy like Ramy, who doesn't probably have like the American social skills that somebody like a Jay Cutler or a Ronnie Coleman or even a Dexter, would have. So there is that sense of there's something lost in translation there. And maybe he feels as if, look, I just want to compete and do my thing, and I'm not into the notoriety, and I'm not into the fame and the fucking spotlight. And I get that because I was that kind of guy also. But, if you want to carry that crown, if you want to hold the weight of that crown for an extended period of time and reap the benefits of what a real Mr. Olympia could get from this title and this sport in the short time that you carry that crown, you got to act a little different. And maybe he just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. I'm still going with the world revolves around Big Ramy and Big Ramy's head. Because in Egypt he's a goddamn superstar. In Egypt he is a class A.
Well, dude, it's a different culture. It's a different culture.
You got to think too. Like, think about how many like high level professional athletes we have in America.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And then in Ramy's country, he is the athlete.
Yeah.
I think they have a soccer team, but it's not the same. It's not like, Real Madrid or Manchester, Man U or whatever. So like Ramy is the person in his country. Like there is no one probably more famous in Egypt than him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the other thing too is, maybe he didn't understand the expectations, that are, of him as a Mr. Olympia. And this is what I mean. There is no rule, as far as I know, I could be wrong. When I win a Mr. Olympia, I'll update you guys. But as far as I know, there is no rule that says that you have to make these, X number of appearances at Y places every year, and you have to talk about bodybuilding, and you have to do this and you have to do that. As far as I know, now that there aren't any Weider or AMI contracts anymore, there is no rules or stipulations. And even in that case, the only rules were if you were under contract by those companies. So even if you were a top level Olympian and you didn't have one of those contracts, you were not obligated to do those things. That's part one. Part two, look at coming back to other sports, Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl. We don't expect him to tour the country talking about football. He goes in the off season. He spends months with his wife and kids, and then he goes back to work. Mm-hmm. And that's it, and then, people will probably bring him on ESPN or whatever, but that's the extent of his obligations as far as the NFL is concerned. Mm-hmm. So maybe Ramy.
You touched on two really good points. And the first one is him being from a different country. And you have, and John, we talked about this on a different podcast, but you have American athletes, right? Where this is where people all over the world look to see where the best athletes come from. They come from the States, right? We generate the best fucking athletes around. So we have a higher regard when it comes to what they do in their off season. And just like you said, Derik, that maybe, he doesn't know to take the tours and do, or that doesn't feel obligated because there are no Weeders or AMIs anymore. And that's a very good point. And he's not that good on social media. So that kind of would lean to that argument that maybe that's just not in him or doesn't know any better, or he's not an American who's hit with American standards and has to fucking please the world or get 1 million views on TikTok because now they're Mr. Olympia. Like I said, he just wants to compete and do his thing and this and that, just like a Dorian Yates. Wants to go home, compete, make his money, and do that. Yeah. Dorian wasn't as privileged when it comes from a financial standpoint as a Ramy, who's probably spoon-fed and given everything he needs out in his home.
Right.
So that kind of gives to that argument. And the second argument was a part of being like, well, it kind of covers the same area, being like a Tom Brady, where, you have football, and this is a recognized sport. Football, right. It's an American sport, but it's a sport that's known worldwide. Bodybuilding's known worldwide also, but you don't get the kind of spectators and the kind of money and sponsorship that goes into bodybuilding as you get a football or a soccer athlete, basketball, baseball, so forth. However, so you have an expectation of these athletes, these bodybuilders, to help promote the sport, to bring the sport more notoriety so more income could come in, as opposed to a football where, dude, if you're in the sport, you get the notoriety because of the huge following. So there is a conflict there, but it kind of goes a little bit to what Derik said and what I said also. And then, John, I don't think you're wrong either, where he thinks the world revolves around him. And maybe he thinks it doesn't, but he's gotten away with that for so long. And he doesn't live by American standards, where he doesn't feel like he's got to promote fucking bodybuilding. He's already put his hard work in. He wants to compete.
He won. He's done the promoting.
Right. Yeah. He won it. But however, you still have an obligation. You got to show up. At the end of the day, we can't get around that. You can get around the social media. You can get around the fact that he doesn't like making appearances. You can get around the fact where he just trains and goes home and competes and goes home. But when you have a contractual obligation to be somewhere where the president of the fucking IFBB, it's not a bridge you want to tear down,
I'm surprised he hasn't said anything yet publicly.
Well, Jim Mannion, he's not the kind of guy that does it publicly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure Ramy knows he's not fucking happy, dude. Like, and he probably doesn't need Jim Mannion to tell him that. But dude, these are real guys. These are guys in the industry, that you don't want these guys on your bedside, dude. And even if it's judged fairly, even if he gets a fair shake, it's still subjective.
That's right.
It could be in the back of their heads. You know what? To me, he just doesn't look good. For whatever reason.
It's close enough that I can kind of implant this idea in my brain about what he looks like, and that's what it is.
But that's the sport we deal with.
Yeah.
And when you know this going in, you don't fucking not show up to a Jim Mannion event when you're supposed to be there,
Yeah, especially, and a lot of people don't. Brandon Curry looked amazing last year.
Yeah.
So he's right. He's right there. Like he's nipping at his ankles again. He wants that number 2 spot. So if Brandon Curry comes in looking the way he did last year, and the guy's like timeless for some reason, he gets better every year. I might just give it to him.